All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Erica Easy Prep SAT prep session. We are in session 6. It's good to see everyone, and it's good to see you, Erica.
It's good to be seen. Nice to see you too, Isaac.
So I believe today we're going to be working on some math, some writing, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Not so much essay writing, more like the writing and language section, which is like grammar and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So the best way to follow along is to just get access to the Google link, the Google Doc link, because trying to follow it on my computer is just, it's very confusing. So I will share the classroom code for a few seconds. You can pause the video if you're watching the recorded video. So there we are. Oops. So I have a chat message. I stopped sharing for 1 second. So I just have someone asking for the Khan Academy code that should be in the event where the event is, but oh, thank you, DM. I had to access it. I don't have it handy. I appreciate that. I was gonna say I was gonna give it to you at the end of the class, but someone beat me to it because they're always on it. Okay. So, all right. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get started with. I'm gonna share my screen again. We're gonna be doing some graphing problems. So if you all cannot see my screen that's being shared, please let me know. Also, sometimes for those who are new today, sometimes when I'm working out problems and teaching the lesson, I can't always see what's in the chat. So if you have a question or a comment, sometimes it's better to just unmute yourself and say whatever question you have. Oh, the Google Doc. Okay. So 1 second. I'm going to put the link for the Google Doc. Okay. Here's the link for the Google Doc. I think the privacy should be that if you have a link, you should be able to see it at this point. Got it? I don't know why this is so big. Okay. All right. Alrighty. All right, guys.
I sent you a request.
It should be. Okay. It says try it again, Mary, please, because it said that anyone who has it should be able to get it. Try it one more time. And let me know. No? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share the first question. You can kind of look at it for a second and try it by yourself while I try to troubleshoot why Mary can't see the Google Docs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Try to zoom in on this. Oh, that's too much. So we're doing graphing today. So guys, go ahead and look at that, and then going to try to see what's going on with the Google Doc link. Just give me one more second. Just gonna try to manually add her so she can see it as well. Give me 1 second. Oh, yeah, that's it. Okay. So, Mary, I believe your email address domain that you try to add from is not. Yeah, the administrators of your email domain don't let you have access to Google Docs for whatever reason. So it's probably just, you can probably only see Docs, Google Docs or whatever from within that organization. So if you have another email you want to request access from, an account. For these problems, you can also just follow along. For now, I think these aren't too bad to follow along with. More like the reading and stuff is probably where you would need to look at it on your own computer. Okay, so, speaking about graphing, the graph at left in the SM plane approximates the average mileage in miles per gallon that Deniz's pickup truck gets when she drives at a speed of S miles per hour. What is the best interpretation of the maximum point on the graph? Okay, so with these graphs, interpreting them, oh, sorry, ignore that little save button. You want to first and this is just kind of with every math problem, you want to first kind of decode the information that you're given and what they're asking for. Oftentimes, if you do the first, the latter will follow, meaning that you'll understand what they're asking for. So since we read, and I'll say what helps me when reading these math problems as well is I read it once through, like I read the paragraph that contained the question. Then I kind of have an idea of what's going on. It's talking about miles per gallon, there's a truck involved, all that good stuff. Now I can kind of go in and, sorry, something popped up on my other computer. I have another computer on the side. So if you see me looking to the side, that's why. So now I've read the paragraph. Now I kind of want to go in and kind of get some things straight. Now, I always say I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks and stuff that you can try and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, that's fine, you know, use something else. But for me, I like to write everything out when it comes to math, because that just keeps everything straight and organized for me. And I know that math can become very boggled down and stuff if you don't remember what equals this or what equals that. So for me, it's important to do that. So now, we have here average mileage, it says, is M. So M equals or is average mileage. Then we have S, it says S is miles per hour. And if you guys weren't here for the last, one of the last sessions, we were speaking of this word per. Kind of sounds like purr, like what cats do. But per, the word per, it means for every. And sometimes the definitions and the breakdowns I give you might seem kind of redundant or simple, but I promise they're building on each other. So I think it's better if you understand what things mean simply. You can understand how to solve more complex problems, you know, if you understand the foundation of what the problem, what the question is asking. So per means for every. So if S is miles per hour, we can kind of translate and we can say, okay, S equals, I'm going to copy it just as it's here. So I have miles, then I have per. But right here I said that per means for every. So I'm going to kind of just plug it in to here. For every, and then hour. Miles per hour, or mph. Okay. So now, when we're looking at graphs, we have to make sure that it's helpful to locate where the S and where the M are. So the S is here. It's where, I'm sure you guys have heard of the X and Y axis. You know, rise over run, the Cartesian plane, and all that good stuff. So can anyone tell me, and anyone can answer this, can anyone tell me what place the S is in right here on the graph? Is it in the X or the Y area, where the X or Y is usually in the Cartesian plane? Y, DM says X. So yes, it's actually the X axis. So yes, the X axis is usually here and the Y axis is here. Okay, so what we're trying to what we're trying to realize is what exactly is this information? What is this graph telling us? So, not just what the graph is telling us, but rather what is the highest point of the graph. So we see that S is miles per hour. But then what's along the y-axis, or the m-axis in this case here, is mileage or miles per gallon. So I guess I'm gonna try to think of how to pose this question. I have a question for anyone who would want to answer. So you can kind of just unmute yourself or put it in the chat. So as speed increases, what does the mileage do? You can kind of just describe it, whatever you see, just as you see it. AV, yes, it increases to a certain point and then decreases. Okay, so let's put that in terms of, we have more in the chat, goes up until 55 miles per hour and then decreases. Yes, that's right. Did someone want to say something? Thought I heard somebody unmute themselves. Okay, so the mileage increases to a certain point and then it decreases as the speed increases. So at what point does it start to decrease? The mileage. The speed is increasing because as we go, well, the first miles per hour number is 10. As we continue to the right, the speed is increasing. It doesn't stop increasing. This arrow here means it's going on until infinity, potentially. Yeah, it goes up until 55 miles per hour and then decreases. Yeah, that's basically it. So what would be your answer for question 1? It says, what is the best interpretation of the maximum point on the graph? The maximum point is the highest point. So what is the highest point telling us? You can kind of put it in the chat, or you can say it out loud. Anyone disagree with choice A? B? All right. We have A and B so far. Anyone else want to throw their hand in the ring? Give you a few seconds. All right, so we have A and B. So Denise's truck gets a maximum mileage of 18 miles. So the correct answer is A. I'm going to look at B though quickly. So B says Denise's truck gets a maximum mileage of 55 miles per gallon. So the thing here, which is, it's understandable why you might choose B, is that we're getting our axes confused. So axis is basically just referring to the particular line Like here we have S, the S axis, and here we have the M axis. The M is right here. It's behind this red thing. Sorry, I didn't realize that was covering that. So just like we have the X and the Y axis. So axis just means line, basically, for all intents and purposes. Equals the S, or means the S line. So if we're speaking of mileage, mileage is actually vertical. It's within the M axis. So that would be right over here. So the only axis or line that has 55 or any numbers like, you know, that we can see within this graph is the speed or miles per hour. The thing is, choice B says, is speaking of mileage. Mileage is along the M axis, and that's vertical. So that's why there's a bit of a confusion there. So A is correct because we see that, so A says her truck gets a maximum mileage of 18 miles per gallon. So obviously it's the highest point, so that's easy to look at, but once you look at what it's trying to tell you, of course you see it's at 18, but we also see that even as, okay, let's rewind a little bit. Before we get to 18 miles per gallon or 18 mileage, we see that as the speed increases, the mileage is also increasing until you get to 18 miles per gallon, or again, 18 for the mileage number. So after that, as the speed increases, the mileage is actually decreasing. So that means that the best mileage her truck can get is 18. So we'll go to the next problem. So, sorry, choice A is the correct answer. This picture for the next one is too big to fit all in one page, but that's okay because you don't have to look at it the whole time to know. You can kind of figure it out before you even look at the answer choices. Sorry. So a laptop battery gains cell voltage as it charges. The battery initially charges quickly, then gradually slows as it approaches its maximum charge. Which of the following graphs in a TV plane could represent the total cell voltage, V, in a laptop battery after 10 minutes of charging time? Okay, so the answer choices you can kind of look at before you orient yourself with the question, kind of. So we see that V has a vertical axis. That means this vertical line here. And T is horizontal. So, okay, and that's true for all of the answer choices. So I'm just gonna go back up to the question. Okay, so sometimes with these, I think for myself, it's better for me to kind of just figure out what the question is, what the answer might look like before I even look at the answer choices. And this is because sometimes the answer choices can confuse you. So I apologize ahead of time for my shoddy Zoom annotating. So anyway, it says, I'm going to reread the question. The battery initially charges quickly. Sorry. So the battery initially charges quickly, then gradually slows as it approaches its maximum charge. So we see V is here and T is here. So if the battery initially charges quickly, then that means that within a short time, it's going to gain a lot of height in terms of this graph, because V is voltage. It says it gains cell voltage as it charges. So if it charges quickly, that means it's going to move up vertically very quickly, which means it's going to not cover a lot of time. Time is the horizontal axis. So it's going to kind of go up like this. So if this is like 1 second, or no, it's in minutes, sorry. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4. Instead of charging gradually and kind of going over a bigger amount of time, this is more like what a gradual, it's very crooked, sorry, what a gradual charge would look like. But since it's charging quickly initially, or at first, we know it's going to kind of look like this, like that. Okay, so now the next part says, then gradually slows as it approaches its maximum charge. So if it gradually slows, that means it's going to kind of, so we already established that it's shooting straight up at first. It's not going to stop charging, but it's going to start to not charge as quickly. And it says, as it approaches its maximum charge. So its maximum charge means it will be fully charged. They didn't say anything about losing a charge. If it lost a charge, it would go down, right? But it didn't say anything about losing a charge or the charge increasing rapidly again. It just said it kind of reaches its maximum charge. So if it reaches its maximum charge, that means it will stay at a certain charge. Remember, V means charge on this graph. It will stay at a certain charge and not decrease or increase. So if something's not decreasing or increasing, it's kind of just flat. It's continuous. It's called a plateau. I'm not going to try to write that with this annotate because it's going to look terrible, but I can write it down here. It's going to kind of plateau. So plateau means it's just going to be straight. Actually, no, I won't. Oh, there we go. Okay. So before we even look at the answer choices, I mean, I know you see answer choice A because it's right there, but before we look at it, we see that we kind of have an idea of what the graph will look like just based on what we determined from from reading what is happening. So based on that, what do you guys think the answer is? I have A. Does anyone disagree with A, or do they want to co-sign on A? What are you guys thinking? Yeah, the answer choice is A. So we'll look quickly. Let me erase my little annotations here. So yeah, it is A. Now, I mean, that was kind of almost easy because it was the first answer choice and it looked just like our graph, but the other one, B, if it were B, B means that it started fully charged because V again means charged, how much charge it has. And over time, it lost charge. So then C means again that it started off fully charged and over time it gradually lost charge. The difference between, over time, the charge stayed the same rather, and then it gradually lost charge and then kind of quickly lost charge towards the end. And then D means that it took a while to start getting charge, but once it got to whatever this time is right here, it quickly gained a lot of charge. But you guys are right, it is answer choice A. Okay. So, number 3. I feel like I want someone to read this. Do I have any volunteers?
I'll read it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
It says the graph in the YL place shows the interest rate percentage. One can expect for a savings account lasting Y years up to a maximum of 10 years. Accounts lasting for less than 1 year are short-lived, and accounts lasting for more than 5 years are long-lived. What is the significance of the I Intercept?
Okay, so that's a, thank you, Malachi. That's a lot of stuff going on at once. If you've got a Y and an I, those even sound the same. So where do we start with this? Well, I would suggest sometimes these problems require that you kind of, again, translate what the, first of all, before you even get to the question, you have to translate kind of what they're saying, what they're giving you. They're giving you different ways to refer to the same thing. So this is asking, the ultimate question here is asking, what is the significance of the I-intercept? So the I-intercept is, well, the I-plane, or I-axis rather, is here. It's the vertical one. And we see Y is the horizontal one. Okay, so does anyone know what an I-intercept means? Like what is the I-intercept? You guys can shout it out, or if not, I'm gonna just make this smaller because it's big. I wanna make notes. Does anyone know what the I-intercept is? So the I-intercept, when you say intercept, you can say the X-intercept, the Y-intercept. 3 or 5. Okay, get to that in 1 second. So an I-intercept is where you can kind of, if you forget, you can kind of look at the first, like, what word does intercept sound like? It sounds like interrupt. So it's, if we're looking at the I line or the I axis, it's where the graph that we're drawing, the line that we're drawing, I'm sorry, the line that we're drawing, it's where it interrupts the I axis. Or crosses over. So it intercepts this line that we're drawing, it intercepts the I line at the I intercept. Because if you notice, most of the time when you make plots on graphs like this, you're getting a number for one axis and you're getting a number for another axis, and you have to find where that point meets at both of them. But with intercepts, the other axis equals 0. So if you have an I-intercept in this, for this graph, that means that y, the y-axis, or the y point equals 0. Okay, so the question is asking us, what is the significance of the I-intercept? So we've kind of determined what the I-intercept is. The I-intercept is when the line that we're drawing, that is this line here, it's when it hits directly at I in this case. So what number is the I-intercept? What value is it? 6, yes. Thank you, Malachi. So the I-intercept, our line that we're drawing, it intercepts the I-axis at 6, because it's right there, right at 6. It has no value from the Y-axis. So now, we're looking at, again, we're referring to our question, and it's asking, what is the significance of the I-intercept? So we figured out what the I-intercept is, it's 6. It's asking, what is the significance of this? That means, what's the importance of it? What is it saying? What does the I-intercept being at 6, what does it tell us? Okay, well, reading a chat. Yeah, it is where, yeah, it's definitely where the, pardon me, it's where our line starts, for sure. We want to look at, we can kind of glance down at the questions to see kind of how the questions are posed, because you can go back and reread this paragraph here and try to get more information from, the rest of the paragraph. But sometimes you want to, once you read the paragraph once, you kind of establish where everything is. We have the y-axis, we know what the intercept is, it's 6. We know what an intercept is in general. We want to kind of glance at these questions to see how they're framing it, because once we look at the questions, we'll see that it's kind of like, we kind of have to translate something else first before we're even able to answer the questions. So it says, what is the significance of the I-intercept? Okay, I-intercept is 6. We know that thanks to Malachi. So the questions are talking about short-lived accounts, long-lived accounts, long-lived. So the questions are concerning short-lived and long-lived accounts. It doesn't say anything about short-lived or long-lived accounts on the graph. So that piece of information must come from this paragraph. So when they say short-lived accounts, so this is what I mean by, there's a little translation that happens that has to go on first. So, pardon me, we're looking at short-lived accounts and long-lived accounts. Answer choices A, B, and C have that phrasing or those words. So we kind of have to determine what that even means before we try to answer this. D has, I don't know if you guys can hear that train, I apologize. D has different phrasing, but we're going to, if you have 3 answer choices that have the same phrasing, chances are that's probably where the correct answer lies. So you want to definitely make sure you understand what's going on there first. Now, so short-lived accounts, long-lived accounts. Okay, so, and when I say equal for math, equal is the same as is. So if I say 2, or let's see, I'm gonna do it the other way. 1 plus 1 equals 2. That means 1 plus 1, 1 is 2. That's very simple, but you always have to keep that in mind with math, that you're translating from something that you might be confused about, which is the mathematical phrase, to something that you're very familiar with, which is just English. So you're constantly translating math to English. And even when it looks confusing, you most likely already have the tools you need to figure it out. You just have to take it step by step. Okay, so, we have to figure out, what does short-lived accounts mean? What do long-lived accounts mean? Okay, so I'm gonna reread some of this paragraph before it got to the question to see what they're talking about. Okay, the graph at left, Y, I plane shows the interest rate percentage, I, one can expect for a savings account lasting Y years to a maximum of 10 years. Okay, yes. I is the interest rate, Y is the years that the account lasts. Okay, got that. Now,
I think,
sorry?
can I say what I think?
Are you trying to answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, I want to, let me finish making my point first, and then thank you for your volunteering. So short-lived accounts, okay, it says accounts lasting for less than a year are short-lived accounts, and accounts lasting for more than 5 years are long-lived. So these little equations that I wrote down here to kind of sort out and organize the information it's giving me in the question, now I can have something to plug into that. So it says short-lived accounts are less than 1 year. Long-lived accounts are more than 5 years. So now I have an idea of more of like what's going on in relation to the graph and this little informational paragraph. Okay, so now it's asking us again about the y-intercept. This is the y-axis, that's why I said that, my bad. The I-intercept, which is at 6. So when we look at this y-axis here, which is telling us the amount of years that the account has lasted for, how many years has the account lasted for the interest rate to be 6? Malachi, would you like to chime in? Malachi, did you say you wanted to answer?
Yes.
So where does how many years, let me use my cursor here. How many years old is the account for it to have an interest rate of 6? So you're looking at where the interest rate meets the years, the intersection, or intersection is another way of saying where the two axes meet. The y-axis is here, and the I-axis. Pardon me while I drink some water. You can go ahead and speak.
I I'm not sure about that part. Are you saying where does it stop at the 6, the numbers?
So,
I think I solved it a different way than you.
okay, well, how did you solve it?
Um, I seen that it said what is the significance of the I intercept, and then I seen it was at 6 on the graph, and then so I looked at the the answer choices. I seen A and B both said 6, so I thought it was either one of those. And then where it says short-lived accounts and then long-lived accounts, I seen at 6 the 6 and then the little line off of it doesn't go up to like 9. Like it looks like it kind of stops around
It doesn't go up to 9, is that what you said?
like on the years after present day. It goes up. It looks like the line only goes around
Yeah, it
4.
goes up to 10, 10 years.
Yeah, so I'd say the short-lived accounts must be uh like under 5, and the long-lives one must be above 5, 9. So I
Right.
just said it was short.
I Right. I think what you did, I think your strategy is good for if you're kind of running out of time, because that is, so what is the correct answer, do you think, to this problem?
I think the answer is A.
Yes, the answer is A. So you arrive at the correct answer. And I think your method is good for if you're kind of running out of time and you need to put something, because of course, when you're taking the SAT, make sure to answer everything because, sorry, I'm switching my paper. Make sure to answer everything because you're not going to get points taken off for incorrect answers. You're only going to get points added for correct answers. So make sure you fill out everything. Even if you run out of time, make some guesses. So if you're starting to run out of time, happens to the best of us, but you still have a little time left and you're able to kind of read kind of what's going on a little bit, your method would work because, well, it might work, it might not. Sometimes they put in these math choices, and I'm sure you'll see if you, once you start doing practice, if you haven't already, in these math problems, sometimes they put numbers like that to kind of confuse you. So what I mean by that is, let's see, you said you saw 6 here and you saw the 6 intercept was here. So one way they might, no, you're fine. I was a little sick the other day too. I hope you can feel better. Maybe drink some tea or something. So sometimes they will try to trick you and show matching numbers. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So like I said, I think that way is a good way if you are kind of pressed for time and you want to make more of an educated guess without kind of understanding like fully what's going on. And I think too, whatever you have at your disposal to use, you should use. So, whatever way you can come up with stuff, definitely try to do that. So the short-lived accounts, we see that they're less than 1 year. The long-lived accounts, it says they're more than 5 years. So again, what is the significance of the I intercept? Well, we can see here that these are the years of the account, how long the account's been open. We see that the Y intercept is at 6, and that is at a time that's before any accounts are open. Actually, we know that since based on what an intercept means, we know that Y has to equal 0 because an intercept, if you have an I intercept in terms of this graph here, that means that I has a number and the Y does not. likewise, if you had a y-intercept for this graph, that means the y would have a point and the I would equal 0. So that's what, let me go down a little bit. That's what intercepts means. So we see that if the y point equals 0, which we already established because it's an I-intercept, so its companion axis equals 0, that means that, and oh, sorry, I misspoke. If the y point equals 0 and the y is the years the account has been open, that means before an account is open. So before an account is open, it already starts off at 6%. So that would count as short-lived accounts because that's the same as being open for less than 1 year. So the answer is A. Okay, I've been speaking for a long time. I'm gonna let you guys do this one. I'll read it and I'll let you figure it out and we'll start to pick up a little bit. So the graph at left in the TH plane, so we have T, we have H, shows Braden's height, H, in inches. So as we're reading Braden's height, H in inches, that's defined right there. Braden's height, H in inches above the ground, T seconds after he jumps. So T seconds after he jumps. What is the best interpretation of the T-intercepts of the graph? So we just covered intercepts. So you guys kind of know what intercepts are. If it intercepts or if it interrupts the t-axis is here, that means that the h-axis must equal blank. So if the h-axis point equals blank that we just discussed, then that means, and the h-axis refers to jump height as it's defined right here, h-axis equals or is jump height. Oops, I can spell, I promise. Then, this is a little too big. Okay, so I can write there. Okay. So Brandon's height after he jumps, jump height is h, that's along this vertical axis. It's asking what is the best interpretation of the t-intercepts of this graph? The t is here. If it's a t-intercept, that means the h-axis point is blank. And if the h-axis point, if the h-axis equals jump height, then ... So I'll give you guys a second to answer this. I kind of started it off for you and then we will go over it. Just like a minute or so to work it out. Okay, what do you guys think it is? We have a couple choices for C. Whatever you answer, I might ask you to defend your answer. All right, we're all agreeing with each other. Okay, so MJ, can you tell me why do you think it's answer choice C? Can you kind of walk me through it? However you came to that answer.
I chose answer C because when I looked at A, it said that he jumped 0.6 feet in the air.
Mhm.
But I want to make sense because everything on here is like whole numbers, stuff like that. And then he didn't jump 0.6 times per second because I don't think that's possible. And then that is true for number C. It says that, I mean, for letter C, that he remained in the air for 0.6 seconds. As you can see, like
Mhm.
the little line, it goes up and down.
Mhm.
It's like the time that he was in the air.
Right.
And then for D, it says he reached the peak. He reached the peak of his jump after 0.6 seconds. And no, that's when he landed. It says that he reached the peak at around like 0.4 seconds.
Yeah. The peak is what part of the parabola, would you say?
But you were asking a question?
Yeah. What you said he reached the peak at like 0.4. What part? I was just asking you to point out to me what part of the graph of the points that are have been graphed here, what part is the peak?
23.
Yeah. That's what kind of more like 24. I have to like squint my eyes. But yeah, the peak is the highest point. So that's correct. And we see that, as you said, thank you, MJ, by the way. As you said, that if we're looking at answer choice D says he reached his peak of his jump after 0.6 seconds. Well, 0.6 seconds is right here, but the peak is over here. So we can rule that out, as you said, jumped. So we can look at A, Braden jumped 0.6 feet into the air. We know that's wrong because 0.6 is more of a measurement that's given for seconds, not for feet. 0.6 is within this number line. It's a possible number, but it's not given as, it's not highlighted as a number. Meaning that 0.6, the value is within the this axis, the H axis, but it's highlighted more in the T axis, and it's right there. So for answer choice B, Braden jumped 0.6 times per second. Okay, so let's look at our graphs again. We have jump height and the seconds. We don't have times. We don't have a part of this graph that tells us how many times he jumped. It just says that he jumped and has the height of the jump off the ground. And then it has the time it took to start the jump, which is right here. And then the time it took to land. C is the correct answer. And then Braden reached the peak of the jump. We already covered that. But just so you know, you have another way of looking at this. Let me just click off here. When we are deciphering what these graphs mean, and I'm always going to, we spend a lot of time looking at one answer, one problem in particular, because I want to give you different ways of looking at it. So we see that this is the jump height in inches. So this is how tall this the jump is, how many inches off of the ground he jumps. Okay, so now the t-axis, the horizontal axis here, it's looking at, sorry, right here, it's looking at the time that's passing. So we're looking at how high the jump is and the time that's passing. So both values for the h and the t axes start at 0 for the origin. It's okay if you don't remember the terminology. I'm just throwing words at you. If they stick, it'll help you. If it doesn't, it's okay, as long as you understand the main part of what's going on. So they both start at 0 because nothing's happened yet, okay? So he hasn't jumped yet and no time has elapsed just yet. But as the time starts to elapse, it starts to move to the right, right? This means that time is passing. And he starts to jump. So this right here is when he's just started to jump and he's just starting to raise up off of the ground. So you can kind of see, like, I guess maybe like if you visualize it like in slow motion, this is him raising off the ground until he gets to the highest point off the ground. That's there. And then his height off the ground starts to decrease. See, as it goes back down, and then until he gets back to the ground. And all of this happens within 0.6 seconds. This will help you if you guys start to, in physics, you're gonna, if you guys, anyone's pre-vet or pre-med or, you know, some science heavy major, you're gonna start covering physics and that kind of stuff. Like when you visualize movement, especially off the ground, that will come in handy. Okay, correct answer is C, as I said. All right, so we have one more math problem. Then this one's a little, you know, switches it up a little bit. Looking kind of backwards, kind of upside down. I think you guys have a good feel for what's going on so far. I'll read it for you, and then you guys, I'll give you a second to answer, and then we'll review. The graph at left in the TH plane shows a function used to model the height h in feet of the top of a pool toy above the surface of the water t seconds after the toy has been thrown toward the water's surface. How many seconds after the toy had been thrown did the pool toy resurface? So, okay, I read this. I have a general idea. There's a pool, there's a toy, there's height, there's seconds. So let me go back in and kind of look at exactly what is going on and orient myself with this graph before I start to answer this question. Okay, so I'm skimming along. It says use the model height h, height h. Okay, h is here. This is the height. Okay, it says height above surface of the water in feet. Okay, so this is height above the surface of the water in feet. So right here, I see if this is height above the surface of the water in feet, I see some negative numbers here. So what that tells me is that this is the surface of the water right here. It starts at 0. And then as you go down, that means you're below the surface of the water. But as you go up, you're nearing the surface of the water until you come out and you start to be above the surface of the water. So this is what this axis means, this H, height above surface of the water. Okay, I'm oriented with that. Now, T, I need to find out about this axis. T, or this line here. T seconds after the toy has been thrown toward the water surface. Okay, so T is seconds. So again, this is just showing time. And what these graphs show are the relationship between the two axes. So the two axes here are H the h-axis and the t-axis. So the relationship between the h-axis and the t-axis, or the relationship between height above the surface of the water and how much time has passed. So the relationship between those two things. I'm going to give you guys a minute to answer, and we'll come back and review. All right, I have a few answers. Thank you, AV, MJ, DM, ML. Do we have an answer, SH? Initials SH? Do you want to throw your hat into the ring before we review it? Okay, we'll go ahead and review. They might have stepped out for a second. Now, I want to call on one of you guys to help explain to me how you arrived at that. And you can say whatever comes to mind. Don't worry about using the correct terminology. Just explain it as you understand. So AV, can you explain how you came to your answer choice of C, please?
Yes. So it says that it was thrown into the surface and then it went underwater. So the curve at the bottom is it going under the water surface, and then it resurfaces at towards the end of the graph. So that would be at 1.1, which is why I chose C.
Simple and to the point. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Okay. Let's go over it a little bit. So the correct answer Sorry, I'm reading chat messages. 1 second. Okay, so DM, you're asking, isn't it 1.1 to 0.1 because resurface? So when it says resurface, it's speaking about when the toy is back from under the water. So let me put my little annotation thing. The correct answer is C, and I'll explain why. 1 second. Okay. So if we start to visualize what this graph is telling us, no worries. But I'll just do a quick run through also. If we start to visualize, kind of be like a slow motion instance of us visualizing like what's going on with this graph. The height is here. We know that this is height above surface of water in feet. So we know that as the height increases, that means that the ball or the toy, I don't know why I said ball, didn't say ball, does it? No, the toy is above the water, and as H increases, it's more and more above the surface of the water. So that means that, see, when you have these arrows at the end of a line here, these arrows, that means that this is going on towards infinity. So you can potentially go as high up or as far down as you want. So if the height is 0, this is right here, the origin. Let me actually, oops, sorry. No, I'll keep it like that. If the height is 0, that means it's right at the surface of the water. It hasn't added any height, or H hasn't increased. So if H starts to become negative, and we know that H is the surface of the water, that means it's starting to go below the surface of the water. So we see that, yes, well, here it doesn't start. Let me rephrase that. Thank you for the question. It doesn't really start at 0 here, because let's say if the ball, well, I keep saying ball, if the toy was at the surface of the water, it would start here. I said that more so you guys always think of like what that means if both axes have a point at 0. Like, I guess kind of what that means, but I think in this instance, it's a little confusing. So where the ball, keep saying ball again, where the toy starts is actually above the water, because that's the first point we get for the location of the toy. Thank you for the question. That's a good point. So it actually starts up here. I mean, it's thrown from above the surface of the water. This is the surface of the water right here, or the 0 point, the origin. So it starts from above the surface of the water, and then it's been thrown towards the water's surface. So that means it starts to go down because it's higher than the water surface. So then as time goes on, so this is kind of when the time starts, right around this area. Technically, it's not technically at the beginning of time for this throwing the ball, but these, this is like splitting seconds, so it's basically at the beginning. It's just very zoomed in at this one moment. Okay, so as time increases, that means as you go to the right direction of this t-axis, we see that the ball or toy continues to go down until it reaches its like, maximum depth, and then it starts to slowly rise up. So then if we establish this as the surface of the water, this is the surface of the water again, because this is where height equals 0. So that's kind of why I was mentioning the height equaling 0 in the beginning. This is where height equals 0. So if we see here, the toy it gets back to where the height would equal 0, and then it starts to rise up more. And we know that because it's traveling more upwards. And here on this graph, up and down refers to height, the height or lack thereof. So yeah, so it's kind of subtle, and it can kind of be like confusing. So that's why, like in the beginning when we started today, I was speaking of how it's sometimes better to take things slowly and kind of write out everything that you know, so that when you have, no problem. Thank you for the question. That was good. It was good to have me specify what I meant. Sometimes when you start very slowly, even if you like, oh, okay, well, this is too simple, sometimes that helps you when things start to look a little differently, This looks different from the other graphs we were doing. This is, you know, like upside down. It has negative numbers and stuff. But once you start to break it down and realize what information is telling you, what the graph is showing you, then you can answer. So just to reiterate, the answer choice was C, is C, 1.1 seconds, because we see it right here. Because we have 1 and then 1.2, and it's kind of in between 1.1. Sorry, it's in between 1 and 1.2. Let me erase this annotation here. Okay. So we'll go over time a little bit. For those of you who've been here, done sessions before, sometimes I do go over time. But I can also be tighter with time. It depends on what you guys want. I want to speak very quickly on, well, actually, I'll do that later. Our little extra session we had Monday, I think Malachi was asking about the difference between a semicolon, parentheses, commas, and stuff like that. And I was going to answer that. But before that, we're going to do, actually, no, we can cover that because that's practicing this. So we'll go on for the next 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'm going to ask you guys what you would like to see next week and what you need help on and stuff like that. Okay, so writing and language. Okay, writing and language is basically like grammar and stuff. I believe a good chunk of the questions you asked, on the SAT, they're going to cover this. Command of evidence, words in context, expression of ideas, and standard English conventions. That just means if you have good grammar. So a little more than half will cover the command of evidence, words in context, expression of ideas. Basically, it's just going to cover how well you can edit things to make sure it's communicating the point it's trying to communicate. How well your grammar is. Sometimes it's going to test word choice within context. And usually you're going to be looking at a passage, and you're going to have to ascertain all those things based on what would make the passage sound better. So it's a little trickier because it's not just one-off questions. You have to make sure everything kind of flows together. A little trickier, but definitely doable. Okay, so the things I mentioned before, commas, parentheses, dashes. These are known as non-essential elements. They're not essential because they're not very important to have a complete thought and therefore have a complete sentence. So you can know that they're not essential because if they were removed from the sentence would still be correct. It would still be a complete sentence, meaning it would express a complete thought. So you can kind of use commas, dashes, and parentheses interchangeably, meaning you can switch them out as you see fit for non-essential phrases. But whatever you start with, you have to end with, meaning if at the beginning of the non-essential phrase, you put a comma, then you close out that non-essential phrase with another comma. You don't start with a comma and end with a dash, or start with a parenthesis and end with a comma. You just have to make sure that it matches. So a clue for if you are not sure if a phrase or clause, and we'll get to what that means later, but just kind of like a group of words within the sentence. So if you don't understand what phrase or clause means, just know, like, a group of words that you might use a comma for. So if you're not sure if it needs a comma or a dash or a parentheses, one clue that might help you is that when you're reading the sentence, if it seems like there should be like a natural pause there, then that's where you could put parentheses, commas, or dashes, especially commas. Parentheses, I feel like commas are used the most, then dashes, and then parentheses. So let's see what I mean. Okay, so let's put it into practice. The leaf insect, pause, easily mistaken for a real leaf, pardon me, maintains a constant wobble as part of its illusion. Now, I'll read it again a little more slowly, or no, at a regular speed. Sorry, I just read it slowly. The leaf insect, easily mistaken for a real leaf, maintains a constant wobble as part of its illusion. So you notice I kind of had to pause right before that comma. If I read it without pausing, it would go, the leaf insect, easily mistaken for a real leaf, maintains a constant wobble as part of its illusion. That kind of sounds kind of weird and not quite correct. So we know the phrase, the clause that is in between those commas is non-essential, because if I read the sentence without it, it'll still make sense. And I'll show you. The leaf insect maintains a constant wobble as part of its illusion. That's a complete sentence. So we know that that sentence that's added in there is non-essential. What it does, what that phrase does is it adds details, it makes it more descriptive, it gives you information, but it's not essential to this sentence having the correct grammar. So with that said, let's answer this question. The leaf insect, easily mistaken for a real leaf, maintains a constant wobble as part of its illusion. And if you guys haven't done practice yet with SAT problems, for the writing and language portion, they want you to answer whether the underlined part should be changed. And if so, what should it be changed to? So I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer that, and then we'll go over. Okay, I have a few answers. All right, so I have everyone. All right, so yeah, I think A is the correct answer. So DM, can you explain how you came to choice A, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the reason why I picked A was because I always know like there's this rule that if it's like a comma, you can also disregard what's between the two commas. So like you can read the sentence all by itself without the words in between. So like here, you don't really need to say easily mistaken for a real leaf. And also like that description is basically only describing the leaf insect, so it doesn't really have to be part of the sentence. That's why I picked A.
Yeah, that's perfect. And in picking A, you're maintaining the punctuation. Since you started with a comma, you end with a comma, so you don't have to change anything. So that was great. Thank you for that description. That was perfect. All right. Let's do this second one. Give you a few seconds and then we will go over it. Pardon me. Okay, we have one answer so far. Do we have some other answers? MJ, can you tell us why you think it's D?
I was thinking,
One of you guys might have to turn down the volume. That might be where there's an echo.
I was gonna say, I think it's D because I don't think that like needs a comma because I feel like they or any. I don't think it like needs any of those because I just thought that the sentence could just keep on going. If I'd
Mhm.
felt like anything to stop it.
So when we're reading things out loud, I want you to read this out loud, but before you do, when we're reading things out loud, like sentences and stuff that have commas, we pause at the comma briefly, right? I'm sure you've done that before.
Yes.
So can you read this sentence, pausing at the comma, but read it as you answered, meaning, answer choice D with no comma, no dash.
Some researchers suggest that the Tyrannosaurus rex, although often ridiculed for its diminutive arms, may have been able to lift 450 pounds with each appendage.
Thank you. Okay, so some research suggests that Tyrannosaurus rex, although often ridiculed for its diminutive arms, may have been able to lift a full 450 pounds with each appendage. So I kind of read it as an answer that is without any dashes or commas or anything, or a semicolon was the other choice. So what do you think the first comma is doing, MJ? Where it says, the one that's after Tyrannosaurus rex?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate your candor. So oftentimes where you see commas, you're going to have them, they're usually going to be, there for some reason. They're going to be separating words in a series. A series is like when you list off a group of things that are related, like I like fruit. The fruits I like are apples, comma, strawberries, comma, and kiwis, period. So that's a series. Or it can introduce, as we had said before, non-essential phrases or clauses, meaning clauses that don't, make the sentence complete or incomplete without. You can give or take, kind of what DM was speaking about before. So I will say too, once you start to, so if you don't remember the rules, the grammar rules and stuff like that, many times once you start to read the sentences, you're going to want to have some kind of symmetry. You want to have a balance. So if I start reading this and it says, some research suggests that Tyrannosaurus rex, although often ridiculed for its diminutive arms, the natural flow and the natural cadence that English is spoken in. Cadence is a rhythm of how we speak. The natural cadence that English is spoken in would require that I pause again to kind of make this phrase symmetrical. So some research suggests that Tyrannosaurus rex, although often ridiculed for its diminutive arms, may have been able to lift a full 450 pounds with each appendage. That's one clue. We can also go back to what DM said. If you have a question that's asking, basically, if it's asking about if you should put commas or dashes or parentheses, chances are it's asking you about a non-essential phrase or a series, depending. Of course, the sentences are different. So we could do what DM suggested a few minutes ago and take the phrase that will be considered non-essential out as we read the sentence and ascertain whether it's a complete thought or not. So I'll do that. Some research suggests that Tyrannosaurus rex may have been able to lift a full 450 pounds with each appendage. So right there, I took out the part that was potentially non-essential. We kind of have to determine if it is or not when we're faced with these problems. But I took the potentially non-essential phrase out and it was still a complete sentence and it expressed a complete thought. So that tells me that phrase is not essential to good grammar, although it does flesh out and give more descriptions and details. It says that they had diminutive arms. So the correct answer choice is going to be B, because one, we established this is a non-essential phrase, the phrase being, although often ridiculed for its diminutive arms. That's non-essential to having good grammar for this sentence to have good grammar. And since the non-essential phrase started with a comma, we're going to also end with a comma. So we can't have this dash, we have to change it. We can't have a comma and a dash or a dash and a comma or one parentheses and not close it with the other parentheses. We have to have, again, symmetry or, the same things on both sides, kind of what symmetry means. So the correct answer is B. Okay. So we are going to do a little outro. I'm going to close out the video, Isaac. And we're going to, or before we do that, let's actually go over some things that we would want to see next week. So what this does is it helps me to figure out what you guys need help with, what you want to cover. Helps me to write lesson plans that will maximize helping you. So graphing parabolas, reading section. More of the math that we did today. I need another pen. Give me 1 second. This one's dying. Okay. Math we did today, reading section, graphing parabolas, harder math, equation of the circle, for instance. Okay. AV and SH, do you guys have recommendations for what you would like to see or what you need help with? If you haven't started studying, you could just say, just in general, everything. AV, reading. Yes, we have been doing a lot of reading lately. We can do some more. I know it's very tricky. If you want wherever those videos are, there are some videos on the reading sections, other reading sections that we've done. But of course, it's always, if you want to get a little, yeah, the reading section takes a lot of practice. If you want to get a little, so reading, we need to do a lot of reading. Yeah. It takes a lot. So I think last session we did just about, the last Saturday, I think we did just about, it was completely reading. So we can definitely do some reading passages. They are very tricky. Some harder math, just writing down. The reading section is mind-numbing, honestly. I mean, I say that as an adult who's been to college. it's so I feel you. It's hard, honestly. It's a lot. We can definitely do some reading next time. Do I have any tips for you for practice for reading in the meantime? Because hopefully you guys will do some practice before next Saturday as well. What I would say is for the reading, always read the title. Pay attention to, be on the lookout for the main idea, the tone, meaning it's not always directly stated, but the author is going to be communicating with you a certain tone or vibe or mood that they want to communicate with you. So before you even start reading a passage, start to keep that in mind. Like, just think, what is this author trying to say? They're saying something, it's probably going to be boring because this is the SAT. So instead of thinking how boring it is and trying, trailing off and getting distracted, go into each reading passage thinking like, okay, kind of make it like you're like a detective or something. Like, okay, what is this person trying to say? What clues are they dropping? What key phrases are they using? Key phrases are like, however, but, things that kind of signify a turning point. What else? Well, we can definitely cover reading next time. I'm just trying to think of something else to do. But I think you guys should practice the reading a little bit. Oh my gosh, there was a loud noise. Practice the reading at least a little bit if you're having trouble with it before the next time we meet. And I would say practice, have a few minutes to practice every day. Like you can't do 30 minutes, do 15 minutes. And if you can't study everything, study the stuff that is giving you trouble. It might be painful. In fact, it probably will be painful, but it's only 15 minutes and you have like 24 hours in a day. So, and it's better if you really think you'll put it off, do it as soon as you're able to. So that's my little, those are some of my tips for reading section before we cover it again together. I will add, so if you added yourself to the Google Classroom, I'm gonna add some of our other reading. I think you probably would get more from watching the older videos and even more still from coming to the class. I don't think actually looking at the Google Docs would help you. But yeah, okay, so I got your request, so we can definitely incorporate that into our next session. I think today went well. Isaac, would you like to close us out?
Yeah, sure. I just want to encourage you guys to keep at it. Keep on coming to the sessions. You guys are making progress. You're one step closer to getting the score that you want to get. And it will take, a strong commitment and the commitment that you guys are making. Prepping for a test is it takes some time to get to a certain point. So just keep at it and you will make progress. So that brings us to the end of this session. I'll see you guys next Saturday. Good job, Erica, like always.
Try, it's just what I do, but I'm just kidding.
And I hope to see you guys next Saturday.
All right, see you guys next week. Bye.